So thank you everybody for joining us today, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Idea series by What Are You Made Of? I'm your host, Uzair Iqbal. Uzair like knock knock who's there, and Iqbal like kickball, so it's easier to pronounce that way. The Idea series is where I talk to people behind the companies that are making consumer products out of recycled, upcycled, reclaimed, or repurposed items, and how they're impacting the world in a positive way. So I wanted to understand how they came up with these innovative ideas in the first place, then turned it into a business. So during these tough times, we could all use their story to inspire other creators around the world. Today, I'm happy to showcase a company called Elvis and Kresse. One of the many products that they make is a belt made out of decommissioned fire hoses. Not the ones that we use to water our lawn, but these are used to save places on fire by our brave firefighters who put their life on risk to save us. So to talk more about that, I have with me the co-founder of Kresse Kresse, sorry, I'm messing up. It's the morning for me. So to talk more about that, I have with me the co-founder, Kresse Wesling with me. Kresse is a multi-award-winning environmental entrepreneur and young global leader with a background in venture capital and significant startup experience. Welcome, Kresse.
Hi.
I finally found my words. This is Saturday morning for me still.
It's tough. It's really tough, actually. I can imagine. And also, my name is quite tricky. Kresse is, it's not a usual spelling.
It's not, yes. And you give me a rhyming scheme, right? How did you say it?
Kresse like Messi.
Kresse like Messi. Okay. I'll take it like Lionel Messi, the soccer player. I'll take it like that. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I came across Elvis and Kresse, I think about last year. Just Instagram is just like a great research tool. And I love the fact that y'all were making products out of decommissioned fire hoses, which was never even a thought for me. Like, hey, what happens to these fire hoses? Where do they end up? But surprisingly, they just get thrown away. Nothing really happens to them. And so I wanted to talk to you about what was your inspiration for making this happen, especially out of fire hoses?
So I first, you can probably hear by my accent that I'm not British. I'm from Canada. But I first came here in 2004. And I think this is going to be tough for people, but you have to cast your memory back to a time before you could find everything out on the internet. So I've always been fascinated by waste. So I went to the British Library, which is an amazing resource library in London. And an amazing librarian helped me to find all of these waste statistics because I'm just crazy about garbage, I guess. And I discovered it in that year that I arrived. 100 million tons of waste went to landfill in the UK. And I thought, this is a tiny little island. Like, where is it going? So then I started this kind of pilgrimage to all the landfill sites that I could get to. And I saw the things that you might expect, like, you know, bin bags and household waste and old tennis rackets, things like that. But I also saw a lot of commercial waste and industrial waste, and a lot of that was clean. And it just seemed to me such a missed opportunity that nobody had really applied their creativity to these wonderful materials. And then I saw a fire hose, and it was love at first sight, really, because it is such a gorgeous material. It's this rich, lustrous red color. It's life-saving. You know, fire hose only goes to die basically after 25 years of health and safety life. So it can live for 25 years max. But some fire hoses also die on their first outing. You know, if you get in a 22-meter hose, if you get a catastrophic tear at meter 11, that's it. The whole hose goes. And it's so durable and wonderful. And I started bringing them home. And that was not a hobby I could maintain for very long because we lived in a house share in a place called Brixton where our front garden was about 2 feet wide. So no, I had to turn it into a business pretty sharpish.
That's great. I've been to the landfills in Texas, San Antonio specifically, and then one overseas in Dominican Republic, but I've never seen just fire hoses out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's just people just think automatically, even with trash, once I put it outside for the garbage man to come and pick it up, it's out of sight, out of mind. Hey, it's not my problem. I don't have to do anything with it. And that's something that I think an educational side of it, people need to understand what happens. But at the same time, like companies need to educate them and say, hey, yeah, you know, it's your responsibility. And then that's where your company, Elvis and Kresse, came in. They're doing a wonderful job educating people. Like, hey, this is something that otherwise would have stayed for so long at the landfill that we wanted to do something about it. And y'all are making cool products. So the first thing that I saw was a belt made out of fire hoses.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, if a fire hose is going to last 25 years, it's not just like you can cut it with regular scissors, it's going to tear up, but it's going to last you pretty much a lifetime, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, the belts are definitely built to last. And I love that you say you can't cut it with regular scissors, because the first order we got was for an awful lot of belts. And that was while Elvis was making the first ever belt. So we thought, well, why don't we stay up and see how many belts we can cut? And we were using kitchen scissors. And we stayed up all night, and I maybe cut 5 belts. Elvis cut maybe 10. And the next day our hands were like this, just completely, so you need an industrial, basically, you know what a pizza cutter looks like. You need a giant pizza cutter with a motor in it, and that gets through hose. But yeah, a lot of tools we had to develop, a lot of tools that we use, and a lot of the techniques that we use didn't exist because nobody had worked with this kind of thick, durable rubber in that way. And yes, the materials do last a lifetime, which is why, you know, for us, it's really important to put as much craftsmanship and care into the design as we possibly can. And also, you know, for the first year, everything is guaranteed, but after that, we repair everything at cost, which means that, you know, the repair cost, even if someone's had a bag for 10 years and they've run over it with their car, the repair cost is very low.
Nice. So, one of the first I want to bring up is because it was something so unique that you can't just be like, hey, is anybody else making a bag out of fire hoses? So you don't really have another person as a mentor of sorts. So where do you even go to ask questions about that? Like, hey, how do I cut this up? What kind of like a big giant pizza cutter do I use? How does that work?
Well, I mean, we started talking to everybody that we could find, and a lot of the manufacturers, because we at first thought we were going to outsource the manufacturing. And we went to all these manufacturers all over England, Italy, France, and they all said, oh, that's gross material. Like, we don't want to work with that hose. We only work with leather. And so Elvis took some hose to a sewing machine shop, which sold a huge variety of sewing machines. And he said, I want to sew with this material. And the guy said, okay, here's a machine that will do it. We brought that machine home, and promptly it exploded. So he went back and he said, look, I told you I was going to use this material. And the guy was like, gradually over time, he wheeled out 5 different machines, and the 5th one didn't explode. The 5th one was made by Toyota, and it takes 4 people to carry it. I mean, it's incredibly strong machine. So we just had to be friendly. We just had to go out and, you know, yes, ask a lot of questions and just take help where we could find it. But fundamentally, Elvis learned to sew. That's really how we made it work.
That's great. I do want to tell our viewers too that if y'all have any questions, feel free to type them in so we can get those answered as well. Well, I do want to bring up another topic about, you say you can patch up or you can fix a bag, for example, that a person has had for the longest time, and they value it because they've had it for so long. So some tear happened and stuff like that, but you will fix it at cost. So that's a element of circular economy. So why was it important for your company to still have that? Because I see companies just making products and then just coming out with like the newest one the next week. They want you to keep buying instead of them fixing it. So why was that an important element for you guys?
Well, I think we have to recognize that we are at peak consumption. You know, there is nowhere for us to go if we really want to have a future of civilization, if we don't learn to value raw materials more and cherish what we have. And, you know, we actually set up a system on our website. If you buy one belt, that's fine. But if you try and buy a second belt, we send you an email and say, what happened to the first belt? And we found that there was quite a few people who they may have lost weight. And then we said, well, why don't you send that belt back to us and we'll make it shorter? You know, that doesn't mean that or they might have gained weight, and we can send that belt back to us and we'll make it longer. We've actually had one guy where we've adjusted his belt 3 times. But the reason for us is that the reason to start the business was to was to save fire hose and to protect the environment. We run on renewable energy. We treat our own wastewater. We, you couldn't possibly be greener than we are. And then it doesn't make sense to just try and push more product. What we want is to make things that last, and then we want to help you keep them in service. And, maybe that's why we don't have external shareholders. Maybe that's why we don't have investors. But if it makes sense for Elvis and I, and it means that we can sleep at night, then that's the kind of company we want to run.
And those are great values to go by. I know in the bigger general global fashion industry, companies are not on that level. They just keep wanting to pump out newer products every day, which is fast fashion as we know it. But I do see a movement. I don't even want to categorize it as a movement, but it's more of a change in the system that's coming up with companies like yours, where they're saying, we want to flip the system. We don't want it to be polluting and everything. But you've taken it a step further. You're taking it at the place where you're making it, treating wastewater and running on renewable energy. So these are great examples. Now, to take it back to where the fire hoses are coming from, you also have sort of a initiative to give back to the firefighters as well, right? Like you donate a percentage. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Yeah.
So on the first day that I found the fire hose, I then went and met the firefighters, and I said, look, like, what's the deal? And they said, well, we throw away between 3 and 10 tons a year. And that's what I said, look, I'll have it. I'll take all of it. And they're like, what are you going to do with it? I said, I have no idea, but I'll give you half if I ever can make anything out of it.
Yeah.
And they thought that was hysterical. But at the end of the first year, I think we had 134 pounds left in the bank account, and it seemed silly to divide that by 2. So we gave it all to the firefighters charity.
Yeah.
And we have given, we give 50% of our profit from the fire hose range to the firefighters charity. We have done now since the beginning. We're their longest standing donor. And I mean, last year the donation was £50,000, which I think we're quite happy. We're quite happy with that.
Yes. And I love the fact that y'all even put the amount that you're giving away too, because companies will say, yes, 1%, or we give we donate in general. But to me, that doesn't mean anything until you give a report and you put in the numbers behind those points too. And one of the numbers that I was really fascinated by was that for over a decade, none of London's fire hoses has gone to landfill, and over 200 tons of material has been claimed. Yeah. So 200 tons is a lot for a person to imagine. That's 1,000 pounds. No, 2,000 pounds is 1 ton. So that's just a big math that we have to kind of think of, and that's just with your company.
Yeah, and I think that certainly over the last few years, because we started with fire hose, we now collect 15 different waste streams. So the amount that we're able to rescue is just going up and up and up. And I think, next year will be a huge year for us. We're sort of predicting it's going to be a 40-ton year, which will be amazing. And I know a lot of companies celebrate their success based on, what their turnover is. For us, the only 2 things we care about are how much waste we are rescuing and how much money we're giving away. And that's what we measure. And I think that's another thing that businesses can do if they really want to, be a part of a community and give back. Then measure what matters. And exactly. I think that's why I'm glad that you noticed the numbers. And we're really transparent with the numbers. We do open book accounting with all of our partners. So I don't tell you 50% of the profits go to charity. You can call the firefighters. They'll tell you. They'll say, yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, even about 5 years ago, they were like, you guys need to pay yourself some more salary. We're worried you're going to run out of steam.
I love it. I think you had a receipt on there too on the website, right?
Yeah. We get some amazing feedback from the firefighters. Amazing.
That's where I love the fact that y'all are transparent, and then you're proving that you're doing this. And so one of the questions that we got recently is from one of our audience members, do you work with blue hoses, which are the ones used by water companies? Am I getting that right? Yeah,
I've seen a couple of questions. We use blue hoses, but they're very, very rare. They have a much longer life. And different countries use hoses in different colors. So in France, the hoses could be gray, it could be a mint green. In Holland, the hoses are like a burnt orange color. So certainly there's a lot of room for us to expand. We've already had in in the US, we've had Colorado and California want us to come and collect their hose. So we would love to come. We would love to come and set up manufacturing in the US, because it wouldn't make the, I'm not going to ship American hose to England. That would be completely ridiculous. But we would love one day to set up manufacturing the hose there, because there's so many, I've seen another question, there's so many amazing materials that are going to waste all the time. Some of the other materials we collect are coffee sacks, tea sacks, printing blankets, which is a waste from the printing industry, failed parachute panels from parachutes. There's so many materials out there. You just have to kind of open your mind and not think, oh, where can I buy something? You have to think, where can I rescue something instead?
That is a great quote, by the way. I love that. Where can I not buy something, but where can I rescue something? So that's a great lens to look at the world. And that's sort of what I had in my mind when I started this page, that I wanted people to understand. Instead of getting something cheap that's only going to last a couple, 3 different uses, or that you don't know where it's coming from, or the people that are being treated fairly, I wanted people to know that they have a choice. And that's where I sort of started doing this too. And I love that you're already thinking that within US, you wouldn't want to ship anywhere else, because just the global trade of itself is very, very harmful to the environment. I love that y'all have thought of like everything that I was gonna ask, that you're already looking into it. So how do you go about spreading that message to the fashion industry? How do you become an ambassador of making these great long-lasting products out of rescued materials? And
so when we started, everyone, certainly in England, they thought we were hysterical. They really thought we were kind of a bit of a joke. Like, who are these quirky people? And then in 2009, American US Vogue did its first ever green photo shoot, and Cameron Diaz was wearing one of our belts. And that really, suddenly we had all of these phone calls from people in the UK going, oh, like, you guys are a serious brand? And we're like, yeah, we're pretty serious. We're pretty serious. And then we started looking at leather waste in 2010, and we came up with a solution for offcuts of leather. And I was giving a speech at an event in London, and 2 people from Burberry came up to me afterwards and said, can you solve our problem? And we started a partnership with the Burberry Foundation in 2017. And now I'm on their environmental and ethical advisory board. So I think it's one of these things where you think, oh, how can I ever make a change? Well, after we've been doing it for 15 years and it's been a success, people start to pay attention. And yes, we're doing a lot of work with some of the big players in industry now, which is tough, because I want them to move so much faster and so much further and be so much more revolutionary. But at least we feel like we can have a much bigger impact on these materials when we're working with some of the big players that, yeah, frankly, have a lot of waste.
Exactly, and I love that. And taking that into account, you've already talked about one of your achievements. Well, one of the milestones was, being in US Vogue. And people just really, I hope it was a joke when they were asking, are you a serious company? Then you're doing this. But so taking that into account, then what has been some of your more challenging achievements or milestones, and what are some of your proud ones? I know we talked about the big giant piece of cutter that just caught on fire, but what are some other ones?
I mean, we had one terrible year where we were trying desperately to buy a workshop, because the workshop we were in had shut down, and we lost that workshop, and we'd sold Elvis and I lived in a little apartment by then, and in order to buy this workshop, we'd sold our apartment. And then on the day that we were supposed to buy this new factory, the vendors sent me a text message saying, we're not emotionally ready to sell. And that was terrible, because the business had nowhere to be, we had nowhere to be, and we had, we were just scouring the internet trying to find a place to go. And we eventually found where we are now, but we had to move basically 3 hours away from where we were living just to find a place for the business to be. And then we had to find a team. We've had to, because there are no, skilled craftspeople is not something that exists in the UK, because a lot of work was offshore a long time ago. So we started an apprenticeship program to train people, and actually training someone to be high skilled in leathercraft is really tough. It takes 5 years. So I would always say that my proudest moment was when we got to about 2010 and we had solved the fire hose problem for London. So that big scary goal we had, we solved it. But Elvis would actually say that his proudest achievement has been the apprenticeship program, because we've brought in a lot of local young people that wouldn't otherwise go to, you know, they wouldn't finish high school, they wouldn't go to college, they wouldn't go to university. And we've given them a real chance to develop a skill set and to be paid well and to be valued. And yeah, we now have a team, we have a team of, 23 people, and most of that's by building it one apprentice at a time.
Nice, nice. And I bet they have a cool story to tell too, that it's not just, you know, being the classic leather, working with leather materials, but they can go back and say, hey, I work with something, you know, that firefighters use, or other different items. So I think that's a pretty cool way to talk about the company. We have a comment from Coastal Harbor saying, great that you have invested in apprenticeships, such a great scale. And that's something that I have never noticed other companies talking about, that how they're investing in their employees and then developing the skills. So I think, to me, that is one of your top three highlights that you're doing with Elvis and Kresse. But then let's bring it back to today. So how is it impacting with, you know, coronavirus pandemic? I know we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but you said it's pretty much the same. It hasn't been impacted in your area as much.
Well, we're as a business, we're an online business. So actually our sales have increased. You know, when all the supermarkets were empty of toilet paper, we started selling so many bags, and we thought, are people panic buying handbags? This is so weird. But we've been able to really continue the business. But yeah, I mean, society and the wider community at large, it's weird. You know, the UK has been quite badly affected. We've lost a lot of people here, and it's impacted everyone because people aren't socializing. You know, I typically every week go to London 2 or 3 times. I was supposed to have been over this time in Boston and lots of other places, and I haven't left the mill, which is where we're based, and it's so odd. But I think our real care is for our community and our team and our stakeholders. Certainly, donations to the firefighters charity have widely been down because they raise a lot of money through car washes and things like that. So we're just focused on how much can we do for our community at this time, and how can we keep everything running. And if we are selling more, that's great, because it just means that even though some of the other donations will be down, we'll be able to give more.
That's a great way of looking at it, a great way of working about things too. I think, yeah, that's a surprising connection, that, you know, as toilet paper demands went up too, the bags went up too as well. But I think it's just, in general, people just are online shopping too. But it's not that they're just buying stuff for the stuff's sake, but they value what your company stands for. And that's a really good point that needs to be understood. So what are the plans for taking this further? I know you're talking about coming to US and setting up something here. But just in UK, you know, what are some other materials that you're working with besides the ones that you've already mentioned?
So we've got an amazing project that we're doing right now. I have always wanted to. So all of our ideas come from waste. We're a waste-led business. And in the UK every year, we have a littering problem here. People throw 16 million aluminum cans into our environment. And there's cans everywhere. There's water bottles everywhere. And it drives me crazy. And right now, we buy our belt buckles, we buy our hardware, but I've always thought, why can't we make our hardware from these cans? Oh. And the big problem was I wanted to do it only using renewable energy. So we started looking into what kind of equipment could we buy, and there is no equipment unless you're going to spend £300,000 on a 3D metal printer, and then you have to refine the aluminum in the first place. So it's just this complicated thing. So we got together with some researchers from a university in London, and we've set up this amazing team of geniuses, and we are designing a micro solar forge. So we're going to use power from the sun. We're going to turn these cans into buckles, and we're open sourcing it. So the whole process is going to take place online. We're going to share all of our learnings about the technology. If we can melt aluminum at 660 degrees C, you will also be able to recycle plastic that way. You'll be able to maybe heat your home. You'll be able to do a lot of things with this technology. And we're designing it to be safe and to be able to be built for less than $500. So I think this is a real revolutionary bit of kit we're trying to invent.
Uh,
Bill Gates is working on one with $20 million of investment. So, you know, he's going high tech, we're going low tech. So I think the interesting thing is that we'll see what happens, but we're designing our tech to be shared with the world. And I guess over the next 12 months, you'll really get to see whether we've succeeded or not, because yeah, the whole thing is happening in the public domain.
Gotcha. So the question comes up, are you going to make them so that for people can buy the belt buckles, or are they going to be like into the belts themselves that you're selling?
Well, we've already there's quite a few other, so we're a B Corp. I think this is a growing movement in the US as well. So Patagonia is quite famously a B Corp, Ben & Jerry's. There's quite a few other companies in the movement that have already reached out to us and said, when can you make buckles for us? When can you make hardware for us? So we've said, look, like, it's a $500 machine. You could build your own machine, collect your own cans. But yeah, we do predict that people will want to buy hardware from us. So that's actually why at the moment, even in lockdown, Elvis and I have been looking at more space. We've been looking at some new factory space that we can buy local to where we are, which is challenging in this time as well, because, you know, it's just difficult to convince people that you're actually willing, you know, when we're facing a massive recession, that you're actually willing to buy a building. But that is where we're at.
Yeah. And it's just a tough time to do business in general. I mean, people are going to be skeptical that, you know, the investment's really going to come through. But you brought up one point that I really want to highlight as well, is just B Corp. I understand it from the nuts and bolts and to everything like that. And that 1% of your profits go to it. And it's a very, 1% of the profits go to different charities. But at the same time, it's a very tough sort of certification to go through, where they're not just looking at your supply chain, how your building works, to your the people, how they're paid, and the environment. That's the way I describe it. But I want to take it from your perspective. How would you describe that Elvis and Kresse are B Corp certified?
So you have to go through basically 5 areas of certification. They look at your governance, your supply chain, your business model, your colleagues, and then your sort of overall environmental footprint. It is very tough to become certified. But the way to sum it up that is the best is that all B Corps have to change the constitution of their business. They have to put in the legal documents that underpin their business that shareholders are not more important than the environment or its people. And this means that the decision-making changes entirely. So you could never, we could never make a landmine, because landmines are objectively worse for people than they are for shareholders. You know, we could never, you know, mine for oil or gas or be involved in the sale of fossil fuels, because that would be putting shareholders above the environment. So
exactly.
The shareholder is no longer king. And if we could just put that one thing in the legal documents that underpinned every business in the world, we could avoid climate change, and we could have a much more wonderful community to exist in. So it is not revolutionary. It surely is just rational.
I agree 100%. And I'm new to the business sort of side, and I've been reading books and trying to get an understanding of it. And the shareholder concept is not sustainable.
No.
And when you switch it to stakeholders, your supply chain, your community, your employees, everything like that, that is more sustainable.
100%.
And I think it's like a quick switch in words from share to stakeholders, but it's a big change in a business concept, and especially because it's an illegal contract. So I love that y'all went in for that certification, that y'all got it too. So that's something to be proud of in and of itself. And is there anything else that you want to mention about Elvis and Kresse too? I do want to tell our audience that you can go on the page and look at all the different products that they've got, and I highly recommend it if you're looking to shop anywhere, to go into Elvis and Kresse too.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I want to share is that we're a very open company, and I realize the world is kind of closed right now, but we run an open workshop. And if you're ever in North Kent, which is just an hour outside of London, we would love to welcome you here. And if you have any questions, we literally will share anything about our vision and our mission and about what we're trying to do. And if you want to get involved in the Forge project, please do sign up for our newsletter, because we are over the next year going to have an awful lot of fun with that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if I ever come to England, I know that's going to be one of my first stops where I come and check out your facility. So I'm looking forward to it if I ever end up coming to England for that. So
Fingers
uh,
crossed.
fingers crossed. Exactly right. Thank you for joining today, and thank you everybody else that was in the audience as well. Y'all have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.